We're going to think of some more examples of multicultural spaces from around the world. First of all, Birmingham. This is actually my hometown. Birmingham is in the United Kingdom, and it's the second biggest city. It's a very industrial city too, or it was in the past. So Birmingham is also famous for being very multicultural. So one of the biggest immigration groups, or one of the biggest waves of immigration, was after the Second World War, where we saw a lot of migration from the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth were former parts of the British Empire, for example, Jamaica, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. A lot of people from those parts of the world were actually invited to come and work in the United Kingdom after the destruction and the loss of lives of the Second World War. So after that, we saw a lot of migration of refugees. So especially in the 1990s, we see huge amounts of migration from refugees from Iraq, Somalia, Afghanistan, and other conflict zones. Another significant group in Birmingham is Irish immigration. So the Irish have been emigrating to the United Kingdom, and particularly Birmingham, since the beginning of the 20th century. So Irish culture also has a big influence on general Birmingham culture. Recently, in the 2000s, we've seen more and more migration from European Union countries, especially from Poland and Romania. At the moment, the biggest immigrant groups are from Romania and Pakistan. And nowadays, Birmingham is multicultural in many different ways. We have new immigrants, but we also have families that are second, third, fourth, fifth generation immigrants. So there's a huge mixture of people living in Birmingham as a city. And it's also a very important part of Birmingham identity. Birmingham in general, and people in Birmingham, are very proud of this multicultural identity. So if we look at the government, then the Birmingham City Council is always promoting this idea of multiculturalism. And we can see that in a lot of the policies and documents that they share with their employees and that they use as a standard for many of their projects. We can see this quote from the Birmingham City Council website. It says, "Our vision for Birmingham is an inclusive city in which many more people can play their part. A fair chance for everyone in Birmingham." So if we go back to the ideas of multiculturalism, we can see that that definitely includes the idea of inclusion, pluralism, and opportunities. So these are all three elements that are very much promoted in Birmingham. So Los Angeles is another famously multicultural city. This is multicultural in many different ways. So we can see that there is a very large African American community in Los Angeles. By African American, we mostly mean black people who are the descendants of slaves, African slaves, who were forcibly taken to the United States from the 1600s to the 1800s. There's a very large African American community in Los Angeles, which is very much present in the culture of Los Angeles itself. And we can see many examples of this in music and in art that comes from Los Angeles too. Another very significant community in Los Angeles are the Asian immigrants from Japan, China, Vietnam and the Philippines. Again, these are newer immigrants, but also second, third and fourth, perhaps fifth generation immigrants who have been living in Los Angeles for a very long time. The biggest group or cultural group, the biggest group in general in Los Angeles are the Latino immigrants, or people of Latino heritage. So in Los Angeles, we see huge numbers of Latino immigrants from Mexico, Honduras, Cuba, and many other parts of Central and South America. So if we look at the numbers, actually 49% of people in LA are of Latino heritage. In Los Angeles, the government really actively promotes diversity in many different ways. One of these ways, which is very important, is in bilingual schools, especially bilingual between Spanish and English. Another important way of promoting inclusion and promoting equality and access to services is affirmative action. Affirmative action means that people from minority groups are given preference in some cases in access to, for example, scholarships or places in university or places in schools in general. Finally, in terms of immigration, Los Angeles is now, or has been for many years, a sanctuary city. That means that in Los Angeles they really respect the rights of immigrants, even people that have come to Los Angeles without the proper documentation. So this is implemented in many ways in terms of the way the police and other official institutions deal with immigration and deal with people who they feel could be there without the proper documentation. So we've seen two interesting examples, and the final example we're going to see is Sweden. Sweden is a European country in Scandinavia, in Northern Europe, and it was historically very homogeneous or monocultural. So in the past it was very singular as a culture, although there were different regions with different cultures there too. Mostly this was a very white and very monocultural Christian culture. Nowadays Sweden is very famous for its pluralist perspective on migration and on culture. It has quite a high immigration rate of 12% of the population. So in terms of policy, Sweden is really quite advanced in terms of multiculturalist policy. We can see that there is an integration policy in government. There's also a lot of diversity that is promoted in schools. Representation of minority groups in the media is also very much promoted. And there is also a lot of funding for ethnic groups in order for them to do different projects and to hold cultural events too.